couplets right next to each other, but certainly something that needs to be taken very seriously over the Lutcher area immediately. This would then continue toward the reserve area. Still unknown if this may jump the river and move on to the west bank. It looks like most of that rotation within the storm is on the east bank right now, but that could quickly change, as we have seen in numerous tornadoes. Let's see. Okay, we're going to be looking at also, while we continue to track this likely tornado around Lutcher, moving toward reserve. Just reading, this is kind of another update from the Weather Service. We're going to see kind of a considerable severe thunderstorm warning issued shortly for the metro New Orleans area, where we could see winds sustained of 70 miles an hour. So very shortly here in the metro area, we're going to start getting on some of the strongest of the winds. We've seen those not quite as strong on the North Shore. Thankfully, you've already dealt with those storms on Monday, but we may be dealing with this more now on the South Shore and more of the strong wind threat, as we've been tracking that Boeing echo from Lafayette, basically following I-10, staying south of 12. That would be what would impact shortly the metro New Orleans area. Right now, though, we've got the potential for a tornado now already east of Lutcher, as we kind of watch this moving so very quickly, looking at the likely rotation area. And again, as I had mentioned, and it was almost two distinct little areas. You have a stronger one showing up near Lutcher, but hopefully more over the marshier areas north of Lutcher and far enough north of the river. But then also on the west bank, you've got this area around the Vacherie area. So two distinct areas of rotation, kind of difficult to see exactly which one is winning out when we look at the velocities, but certainly that entire area, say from Vacherie toward Lutcher, both sides of the river, need to be watching this one carefully. Severe thunderstorm warning was just issued for Jefferson, Lafourche, Orleans, Plaquemine, St. Bernard, St. Charles, St. James, St. John, and Terrebonne. That is for the potential of some small hail, but hail at about three-quarters of an inch, as well as the 70-mile-per-hour winds. Waiting to see if we get new information on this likely tornado or confirmed tornado on the ground from the Weather Service. Going back over to our likely debris signature, not showing up as defined as it was earlier when the warning was first issued. And again, what we're looking at here are kind of these little spikes in the colors. Might have been one right there, but that's the one that shows up a little bit more. That's also near where we have some of the stronger rotation showing up. So around the Lutcher, Vacherie area, if you're watching us right now, you need to be in that centrally located room. Also looks like we had kind of a little spike there near Laplace, but it looks like it just kind of popped up and then went away. And I'm not really seeing the signature for the debris any longer. So hopefully this may be a weakening tornado, as we almost have kind of a battle between two distinct areas of rotation, and it looks like they may be kind of fighting it out a little bit, and hopefully maybe keeping them a little bit on the weaker side. Weather Service, though, is going to continue the tornado warning. Again, that will be for about the next 7 minutes, 8 minutes or so, expiring at 7:15. So they are continuing it. I'm going to read what the text says from the warning. The tornado threat has diminished. The tornado, okay. Let me see here. Oh, I'm sorry. They are saying that the tornado warning has been expired. I'm sorry, I misread that. I'm seeing an extension, but it says it expired. So the tornado threat has diminished. Tornado warning has been canceled. Hail and the strong winds will remain in that area. I'd said we're looking at kind of almost two distinct areas. So it looks like maybe now that is starting to wane. You can kind of see what had been a confirmed tornado has been removed to just now a tornado warning, but that will continue. Not continue, I'm sorry, but has been canceled. So we ought to see that polygon lifted fairly shortly. But again, you're still in an area of some very strong winds, as we just mentioned. We're now getting some of those strongest of the winds in our river parishes. This bow echo, boy, it's still really a well-defined bow with those strong winds on the back side of it, that leading edge. This is going to push right across the entirety of the metro area. So all of the South Shore will be getting in on this shortly. These storms have been moving very quickly, and the cells themselves, kind of embedded within the entire line, have been moving at times near 50 miles an hour. The entire line itself has been moving, tends to be in excess of 50 miles an hour. And what we thought what would happen, I'd mentioned at our 10 o'clock newscast, is that you almost had kind of two distinct areas. You had one complex of storms that would affect more the North Shore, then you had following right behind it that longer area of storms that really would pass across the entirety of South Louisiana. It seems as though those two have almost combined. You see kind of the one area right here across Tangipahoa Parish, and then the other one south of Tangipahoa toward like Maurepas, and then you've got that little Boeing feature that is down near Laplace and toward Thibodaux. So you've got the strongest of the winds that have already passed through Thibodaux. Still rough there, but those stronger winds are starting to abate. So things are going to start improving. You do have kind of the tail end of that extends down toward Morgan City. A lot of lightning, some gusty winds there, but the strongest of the winds are still right in through here. And that's where we're going to be watching over the course of the next say hour and a half or so. I really do think a lot of this should be wrapping up not long after midnight, just based on the motion of these storms over the last several hours. There's certainly no sign of them slowing down, which is positive. Now, there are some intense rainfall rates, which is why you also see kind of this light blue here. This is a flood advisory in advance of the line of storms will be racing across the metro area. Because we had the heavier rain on the North Shore on Monday and kind of a bit more of the rain accumulation for the night tonight, we do have flood warnings in effect. This is for flash flooding, but also the river flooding on our North Shore parishes, our North Shore rivers. That will be an ongoing issue. Now, as we've mentioned, this is not going to be the only severe weather event in the next couple of days. We will see more tomorrow and again on Saturday. However, models right now not indicating the extent and intensity of the storms tomorrow and Friday to be nearly as bad as what we're experiencing right now. So if there's any positive, it looks like the next couple of rounds of storms should not be nearly as intense. With an update, as we had mentioned at kind of the top of the hour, we had cut in with a tornado warning that was in effect for St. James and St. John. You still see the flashing there, but it does look like those areas of rotation have kind of weakened. So the warnings have been allowed to, or have actually been canceled, and we will continue to monitor this as now we've got some very strong winds moving into the metro area. We can go back and just take a look if there's any rotation still really showing up, and you're not really seeing that. You've got a kind of very low signature of maybe a little bit of rotation right around the Lutcher area and also on the west bank around Vacherie, but it does look like that has been a weakening and will continue as a weakening trend, so that's some good news. And we're certainly not seeing the indications of debris in the air, debris being lifted aloft into the storm, and so that's some positive news as well. What may be having to once we get into the light of day tomorrow may have to be an area which is surveyed by the National Weather Service for the potential of a tornado. So something we'll have to talk about and revisit for tomorrow. As far as the ongoing concern for the rest of the night tonight, we're going to continue obviously broadly with the heavy rainfall and the strong winds. We have a lot of lightning. We have had reports of some hail. Thankfully, we've not, at least so far, officially, no reports of any significant hail across the South Louisiana in advance of these storms. And one thing that is at least a positive for us is that these storms, and I'm going to put them into motion over the last 3 hours, is that they have been on a weakening trend really since they wrapped up at Lafayette. So here was that kind of one area. Here was the second area that we were going to be watching. And as these have been pushing into southeast Louisiana, you do see kind of those almost two distinct areas now merging. The lightning has been decreasing, so the storms are weakening, still potent. We're still going to get some strong, possibly damaging winds. You're still going to get a lot of lightning. There is still the potential of an embedded tornado, but they have been on the weakening trend, which is something that will hopefully continue through the course of the night tonight, and something we'll be closely monitoring throughout the rest of the early morning hours going into Friday. Again, this will likely be with us for probably another hour and a half or 2 hours. I would say not long after 12:30 or so, we should see most of these storms exiting our viewing area. May still have kind of this southern end, this little tail kind of hanging around our bayou parishes and down toward the coast. Okay, Madeline, our director, says she has an outage map we can show for some of the power outages that we're starting to get here, and I apologize, to kind of difficult to see, but right along the river, so you've got down toward Napoleonville, Labodyville, and then the Convent area, St. James Parish. You've got right along the river within these strong winds as they initially moved out of Donaldsonville. It does look like we do have a number of areas of power outages. As you go a little bit farther upriver, Gramercy in the green right now. Hopefully that does not change. As Gramercy, you're kind of getting out of the worst of the storms, where these had still had a bit more potency as they were moving out of the Gonzales area, out of Ascension, and then into St. James Parish. They were still packing quite a punch. So right along the river, on both sides of the river, you do have some power outages. As of right now, Gramercy showing up in green, and hopefully further down river, we don't have the widespread power outages. Thank you, Madeline, for showing me that, because that does help us out with regards to maybe how bad these storms were as they continued along. Weather Service has said they are expiring the warning as of 11:15, and they are not going to be issuing a new tornado warning downstream as the rotation has broadened out. Still a concern for the strong winds in excess of 70 miles an hour. So strong winds of 70 miles an hour or a weak EF1 or EF0 tornado, they're still going to do some damage, and something that may be hopefully not widespread, but something that could potentially be a little bit more widespread as we continue through the late night hours, and primarily in the metro area now, because that is where we have that bowing feature. This again is the bow echo we talk about, which indicates very strong winds that actually push the rain out ahead of the main line of storms. And while they have not been the winds that we saw when they were over in Lafayette, nor like the winds that they were in Lafayette on Monday, 70-mile-per-hour winds can do some pretty widespread damage, and we tend to see more widespread damage with the straight line winds with regards to when compared to a tornado, which is going to be in a much more narrow area. With straight line winds can be in a much larger area. So something that we'll continue to monitor. Probably our greatest threat will be the stronger winds. And I'm not ignoring the North Shore. It's just that the wind threat north of the lake is not nearly as great as what we're experiencing and will experience on the South Shore. Intense rainfall right now from Amite, really into Franklinton, down into Amite, down I-55 toward and past Hammond. All of that is now getting ready to move into St. Tammany Parish. So St. Tammany, get ready for, you probably already have the light show, but get ready for the more intense rainfall and gusty winds. And as mentioned before, for the metro area, we're going to be closing in on some very strong winds. It looks like, okay, yes, a new tornado warning is now being issued for northern St. John. This is mainly for the Monts area and Norco, although thankfully it is quickly moving into the lake. So let's go to our velocities to show you where that is. There it is right there. And what we're looking at is right around the Monts and Norco area, a possible tornado. We can look at the debris possibility. Doesn't look like anything real, maybe, not really jumping out though. What you kind of look for is not those broad colors. You want to kind of look for more of a tightly compact area of those kind of off colors as opposed to the purples and reds. You want to look for a little more of a compact area with regards to finding debris. So hopefully not, but certainly that rotation signature there is showing up with the reds again moving away from our radar site, which is in Hammond now. So accustomed to seeing the radar site and with relation to Slidell up in Hammond now. So these are the winds moving away from the radar site. These are the winds moving toward, and when they're close together like that, that would indicate some maybe just broad rotation, hopefully not down at the surface, but definitely a rotation right around the Monts-Norco area. But this would be moving very quickly. It's along Airline Highway right now, and then quickly toward I-10. It would continue along a path that would take it out over Lake Pontchartrain, whereas then it could easily become, even if this wasn't a tornado, when you get that type of rotation out over the lack of friction over the lake is where you could possibly and very easily potentially get a waterspout. So something that will have to be watched for as that continues. Kind of moving, it looks to be generally in a northeasterly direction. So around the Norco Monts area, again, you want to be in that tornado safe space right now. This is a possible tornado right over you. Now it does look like it may be a little bit more centered over Airline Highway, getting ready to move toward I-10, but it is in this area, maybe a little bit more removed from the river, where you would want to be in that tornado safe space. As we always try and reiterate, the lowest part of your home and as far away from any exterior walls as you possibly can get. This little tightening up of the winds just kind of really popped up, and what we may end up seeing over the course of the next, unfortunately, hour and a half or so as the storms push through are kind of these little quick spin-ups within the primarily within the bow echo. So I really think the tornado risk may be a little bit greater south of the lake. That's where that bowing of the winds are. And that is tends to be where you get more of that rotation. And unfortunately, we do find more of metro New Orleans. So kind of going from St. John into St. Charles Parish through northern Jefferson, both sides of the river, and then eventually into Orleans, maybe continuing into St. Bernard. We're going to be on the northern end of that bow echo, where you tend to get more of that cyclonic rotation, where it could induce the development of a tornado. And we're going to find that the metro area is going to be right along that path over the course of the next, say, hour and a half. Right now, though, does look like it may have kind of broadened out a little bit from what it had been, but still erring on the side of caution. This is going to be kind of right along Airline Highway at the moment, just to the east or southeast of Laplace. So for folks in the area of the Monts, Norco, maybe kind of more northern Norco away from the river, northern Monts away from the river, you see Gypsy there. So this is moving away from the Mississippi. That is where we have that signature of rotation showing up. The severe thunderstorm warning will continue for not only the North Shore, but we have seen that now issued for the South Shore, with these storms moving in that direction. Want to go back to our reflectivity just to give folks that are now starting to get into some of the more intense parts of the storms. We've got that now moving into St. Tammany Parish, up in Folsom, getting a lot of the lightning, heavy rainfall in Mandeville, Madisonville, toward Beatico, particularly heavy though across much of central and southern Tangipahoa Hope Parish, but also our river parishes. And then on the northern end, again, as I've mentioned, with a bow echo, this is where you've got the strongest straight line winds. That may stay more on the west bank as that continues moving due east. However, on the northern end of these bow echoes, right here is where you can almost get an induced rotation in the thunderstorms, and that can then translate down to the surface and develop a tornado. And that's where we've seen the numerous tornado warnings being issued thus far this evening. We also do have a flash flood warning that will be in effect for basically the entire metro area. And when I talk metro, I don't just mean New Orleans. It's really more the South Shore, really from the river parishes across northern Jefferson into Orleans, St. Bernard, parts of northern Plaquemines, and all of these areas are now under a flash flood warning. You saw what had been, and I know we've got all these colors on the map here, what had been kind of a light blue color indicating more of a street flood advisory has now become more of a flash flooding. I don't believe it's going to be an ongoing issue, but in these storms, you've got some very high rainfall rates, and within those more intense rain producers, you could pick up a quick couple of inches in a very short period of time. And sometimes we're talking 15 minutes to a half hour. You're going to get some, maybe more than just street flooding. That will be an issue over the next couple of hours. As I've mentioned, this isn't going to last forever. This is the worst of it that is pushing through at the moment, or about to push through with regards to New Orleans. This is what's going to be pushing through with the strong winds, the heaviest of the rainfall, and more of the lightning. Now, we do kind of have this little tail end out toward Morgan City and toward New Iberia. That may stay more south of the city as this entire complex of storms is moving toward the east. But as mentioned, we've got the ongoing tornado warning as it looks like that rotation hopefully is a little bit more toward now I-10 and moving more in the direction of Lake Pontchartrain, and it is, and getting it away from land. So LaBranch, this looks like it's going to stay clear of of Jefferson Parish as it moves out of St. Charles. So it does look like right now it's more over the spillway and getting ready to move out over the lake. So that could likely become a, looks like a little area of rotation around the reserve area. Let me go check out the reflectivity, or the velocities. Yeah, kind of showing up somewhat around there. Not being indicated by the Weather Service just yet. We'll keep an eye on this area around reserve. Again, this is kind of one of those nights where hopefully you're not up too much longer. I know for a lot of folks it's hard to sleep when you hear the rumbles of thunder, the wind, and the rain. You kind of want to be aware of what is happening at that time. And I, believe me, completely understand that. So hopefully we don't have to deal with this for very long into the early morning hours of Friday, and you'll be able to get a decent night's sleep once all of these storms are gone. But it does appear as though that rotation that was around the Muntz and Norco area are moving more toward right along Lake Pontchartrain over I-10. So it does look like that is moving away from any populated areas. So some good news there. I'm not going to focus too much more on that, as it does look like it is now affecting more around the lakefront and around the Bonnet-Carré Spillway area. Strong winds moving across the river parishes, or out of the river parishes, excuse me, and more of our toward down the bayou. Raceland looks like they may be clearing out of some of the strongest winds, but those strong winds have already pushed through Luling and Booty, and they're starting to now approach the West Bank. So Wagaman, looks like could be getting in on some of the strongest of the winds, and if they are able to make it a bit farther to the north, River Ridge, you will also, and Kenner getting in on some of those of the strongest winds here at the moment, at this time. Hopefully we don't see any further rotation within the northern end of this bow echo, but that is still certainly a possibility. Hopefully if we do see any additional rotation, maybe it's far enough north that it would be out over more of the Lake Pontchartrain south, right off of the south shore in Lake Pontchartrain, as far as any additional rotation. And that is very much a possibility. For easy rotation, you want kind of a flat surface, and that's why waterspouts are so much more common than tornadoes. You get the friction of the land, and with land and that interaction, it's harder to get that spin. Over water, very, very easy. So it may be that we start to see some waterspouts right along the south shore of Lake Pontchartrain here shortly, as these storms are moving very quickly toward the east. As I've said, we've got kind of all of our viewing area in this right now. Not as bad on the north shore. We do have new severe thunderstorm warnings being issued kind of downstream of the storms that are now moving into western St. Tammany Parish. So those storms in particular, primarily some gusty winds. You don't have the strongest straight line winds like we do south of the lake, but a lot of lightning and also the possibility of some small hail. In fact, let's go and take a look at the possibility of some hail. What you're looking at here, the blue, light blue to dark blue, is more of pea, almost borderline quarter size hail. You've got about the same on the storms on the south shore and down toward the bayou. So it doesn't look like hail is too much of an issue within these storms, but certainly the possibility of seeing some of that within the leading edge of these storms. Looking at, around the Convent area in St. James, we're getting multiple reports of trees and power poles down, as well as what we mentioned before, the reason for the warning, the debris signature, picking up debris being lifted aloft in the storm. So there are getting some reports, or we are getting some reports now in the Convent area in St. James of some debris from possibly a tornado, certainly the strong winds within this bow echo, but likely something that will be surveyed tomorrow by the Weather Service to see if that was a tornado. Strongest winds moving through Kenner right now, approaching Metairie and more of Jefferson Parish. We're getting more of those strong winds, though, West Bank and down farther south. That's not quite towards Jean Lafitte, approaching the Estelle area right now, and those strongest of the winds would generally stay